Get off the field! Nobody asked you to be here!
I'm not here for trouble. I'm just leaving.
Then walk around like everybody else who knows their place.
I already told you, I'm leaving. Move out of my way.
Come on, hit me if you need everyone scared of you.
I'm not giving you the excuse you're begging for.
Brock shoved the football into her chest. She lowered it to grass and stepped back. The team laughed until her left foot slid behind her right and her hands rose. Brock's grin faded.
You think that makes you dangerous?
Calder's clipboard hit the turf.
Stop! Nobody touch her!
Brock had no idea that Stance had revealed whose daughter he was threatening. Before continuing, comment where in the world you are watching from and make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you can't miss. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across Redwood Valley High's football field as practice wound down. Players jogged through their final drills while cheerleaders packed up their equipment. Parents sat scattered across the aluminum bleachers, some already heading toward the parking lot. Naomi Ellis walked along the edge of the field, her blue hoodie a quiet splash of color against the fading green grass. She kept her head down, focused on the path that would take her to the bus stop on the other side of the athletic complex. The shortest route home meant cutting across this corner of school property. She didn't want trouble. She never wanted trouble. But trouble had a way of finding her anyway. Well, well, well. The voice cut through the evening air like a blade. Look what we got here. Brock Harlan stood 30 feet away, his golden hair still damp with sweat, his jersey stretched tight across his broad shoulders. The starting quarterback of Redwood Valley High. Local hero. Wade Harlan's son. Everything about him screamed privilege and power. He jogged toward her with that easy, confident stride that came from never being told no. Behind him, the rest of the team began to notice the distraction. Practice had officially ended, but now something more interesting was happening. "You lost, sweetheart?" Brock called out, loud enough for everyone to hear. His voice carried that fake concern people used when they wanted to sound helpful while being anything but. This is a private practice field. Students aren't supposed to be wandering around here. Naomi stopped walking. She kept her hands visible, her posture relaxed. Her father had taught her that lesson years ago. Never give them an excuse to say you looked threatening. "I'm just passing through," she said, her voice steady and calm. "Going to the bus stop." "The bus stop?" Brock laughed, the sound sharp and mocking. "There's a perfectly good sidewalk that goes around the school. Why are you trying to cut through our field?" More players drifted over now. The cheerleaders had stopped packing. Even some parents in the bleachers turned to watch. Naomi could feel their eyes on her like spotlights. From the gate near the school building, Assistant Principal Marla Voss observed the scene with cold calculation. Her arms were crossed, her expression unreadable. She made no move to intervene, no attempt to remind Brock that all students had equal access to school grounds. She simply watched and waited. Across the field, Coach Raymond Calder looked up from collecting equipment. He was too far away to hear the exact words, but he could see the body language, could see Brock moving closer to the girl, could see the team forming a loose circle around the confrontation. His stomach tightened with recognition. He'd seen this movie before. "Look," Naomi said, keeping her voice level. "I don't want any problems. I just need to get to the bus." "Problems?" Brock's grin widened, showing perfect white teeth. "Who said anything about problems? I'm just trying to help you find your way. You seem confused about where you belong." The words hit like a slap, but Naomi didn't flinch. She'd heard worse, much worse. But hearing it and accepting it were two different things entirely. "I know exactly where I belong," she replied quietly. "Do you now?" Brock took another step forward, close enough that she could smell his cologne mixed with sweat. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're trespassing on sacred ground." The team laughed at that. Sacred ground, as if a high school football field was some kind of holy site that only certain people could touch. Brock stepped directly in front of Naomi now, blocking her path completely. His grin never wavered as his teammates gathered behind him, forming an audience for whatever performance he had planned. The field had become a stage, and everyone knew their roles. Everyone except Naomi. The fence pressed against Naomi's back, cold metal through her hoodie. She had nowhere to go now, trapped between the sideline barrier and Brock's growing audience of teammates who formed a loose semicircle around them. "You know what your problem is?" Brock said, his voice getting louder, more theatrical. He wanted everyone to hear this. "You think you can just walk wherever you want. Act like you own the place." He grabbed a football from the ground beside him. The leather was scuffed from practice, still damp with evening dew. He hefted it in his hands, testing its weight like a weapon. "Maybe you need a lesson in respect." Brock shoved the football hard into Naomi's chest with both hands. The impact made her stumble back against the fence, the metal clanging behind her. "There, now you're holding school property. That makes you a thief." The team erupted in laughter, harsh, ugly sounds that echoed across the empty field. Someone whooped. Another player clapped slowly, mockingly. "Hit me," Brock said, spreading his arms wide like he was inviting an embrace. His grin was pure malice now, all pretense of friendliness gone. "Go ahead, take a swing. You know you want to." He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper, meant only for her. "Come on, ghetto girl. Show everyone what you're really made of. Prove me right." The football felt heavy in Naomi's hands. She could feel the rage building in her chest, hot and dangerous. Her father's voice echoed in her memory. "Control your anger, baby girl. Never let them make you the villain in their story." Instead of swinging, instead of shouting, Naomi did something that surprised everyone. She gently lowered the football to the turf, set it down with careful precision, like it was made of glass. Then she shifted her feet. The movement was subtle at first, a slight widening of her stance, her right foot sliding back 6 inches, her weight dropping lower, settling into her hips and thighs. Her center of gravity found its perfect balance point. She raised her left hand, palm open, fingers relaxed. Her right hand came up to guard position near her ribs. Her body angled 45 degrees to Brock's center line, presenting a smaller target while maintaining optimal striking position. The laughter died. "What is this?" Brock said, but his voice had lost some of its swagger. "Look at this girl. Look at her stance." He tried to recapture the crowd's energy, gesturing broadly at Naomi's position. "She thinks she's some kind of kung fu master or something, like she's in a movie." But something had changed in the atmosphere. The teammates weren't laughing anymore. They were staring. Even the cheerleaders had gone quiet. There was something unsettling about how still Naomi had become, how perfectly balanced, how ready. Brock's confidence cracked just a little. He'd expected her to swing wildly, to scream, to give him the reaction he needed to justify whatever came next. Instead, she looked like a coiled spring, dangerous in her stillness. That's when Coach Raymond Calder looked up from across the field and saw exactly what Naomi had just done. His clipboard hit the ground. Equipment scattered. "Stop!" he screamed, his voice carrying pure terror across the 40 yards between them. "Nobody touch her!" He sprinted toward them with surprising speed for a man in his 60s. His face was white with panic, his eyes wide with recognition. The team turned in shock. They'd never heard Coach Calder sound scared. Ever. He was the man who'd faced down angry parents, hostile referees, and championship pressure without blinking. But now he sounded absolutely terrified. Not for Naomi, for Brock. "Get back!" Calder shouted as he ran, waving his arms frantically. "Everyone get back! Now!" Naomi held her stance, perfectly still, perfectly controlled, waiting. Coach Calder reached them and immediately grabbed Brock by the shoulders, physically forcing him backward, away from Naomi, away from whatever disaster he'd almost stumbled into. The quarterback stumbled, confused, and humiliated in front of his entire team. Naomi straightened from her stance with the same controlled precision she'd entered it. No sudden movements, no wasted energy. She simply rose, collected her backpack from where it had fallen, and walked away. Her footsteps were steady on the grass, measured, like she hadn't just made the entire football team go silent with fear they didn't understand. Behind her, Brock Harlan exploded. "What the hell was that?" he screamed at Coach Calder, his voice cracking with humiliation. "You made me look like an idiot!" The teammates shuffled awkwardly, unsure whether to stay or leave. They'd never seen their quarterback dressed down like this, never seen him look small and confused instead of commanding and confident. "Practice is over," Calder announced, his voice still shaky. "Hit the showers. All of you. Now. Don't you dare dismiss us." Brock shoved past two linemen to get closer to the coach. "I'm the captain of this team. I'm the star quarterback. And you just embarrassed me in front of everyone." His face was red with rage and something else, something that looked uncomfortably like fear. "That girl disrespected this field. She disrespected our school, and you acted like I was the problem." "You were the problem," Calder said quietly. The words hit Brock like a physical blow. For a moment he couldn't speak, couldn't process that his own coach had just sided against him. "My father's gonna hear about this," he snarled. "You think you can humiliate a Harlan and get away with it? You think—" "I said practice is over." Calder's voice carried the authority of 30 years coaching football. "Go home, Brock." The quarterback stood there for another few seconds, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. Then he stormed toward the locker room, his cleats digging angry divots in the turf. The rest of the team followed in uncomfortable silence, leaving Calder alone on the field. He stared after Naomi's retreating figure as she crossed the parking lot. That stance, those precise movements, the way she'd shifted her weight and angled her body. He hadn't seen form like that in years, not since Marcus Ellis. Naomi reached the edge of the parking lot where an old blue sedan sat waiting. The engine was running, exhaust visible in the cool evening air. Her Aunt Valerie leaned across the passenger seat to push open the door. "Baby girl, what happened?" Valerie's voice was tight with worry. She'd seen the crowd gathering around Naomi from her car, seen the way the boys had surrounded her niece. "I saw all those kids. It's fine, Aunt Val." Naomi slid into the passenger seat and buckled her seatbelt with the same careful control she'd shown on the field. "Just the quarterback, showing me exactly who he is." Valerie studied her niece's face, looking for signs of tears or anger or fear. But Naomi's expression was calm, almost serene, like nothing had happened at all. "You sure you're okay?" "I'm sure." Naomi stared out the windshield at the school building. "Can we go home now?" Valerie put the car in drive, but her hands gripped the steering wheel tight. She'd moved to Redwood Valley to give Naomi a fresh start after Marcus's death, a place where nobody knew their history, where Naomi could finish high school in peace. But she was starting to think peace might not be possible in this town. Back on the field, Coach Calder finally moved. His legs felt unsteady as he walked toward the equipment shed. That stance kept replaying in his mind. The perfect balance, the ready position, the way Naomi had transformed from a teenage girl into something dangerous in the span of 3 seconds. He'd seen Marcus Ellis teach that exact same stance to his students, had watched the man demonstrate proper form in the high school gymnasium during after-school self-defense classes, before everything went wrong, before the accusations and the scandal, and Marcus's death 6 months later. Calder drove home on autopilot, his mind stuck in the past. His small house sat at the end of a quiet street, the porch light already glowing in the gathering dusk. He let himself in through the front door and went straight to his bedroom closet. The cardboard box sat on the top shelf, covered in dust. He hadn't opened it in 3 years, hadn't wanted to look at the contents since Marcus Ellis's funeral. But now he pulled it down with trembling hands and carried it to his kitchen table. Inside were newspaper clippings, photos from better times, team pictures from when the football program still had integrity. And there, near the bottom, was the photo he'd been looking for. Marcus Ellis stood in the center of a group of students, demonstrating a defensive position. His stance was identical to what Naomi had shown on the field. The same foot placement, the same hand positions, the same controlled readiness. Coach Calder's fingers traced the edge of the photograph, his throat tight with old guilt and fresh recognition. "Marcus," he whispered to the empty kitchen. Naomi Ellis hadn't come to Redwood Valley by accident. The morning sun cast long shadows through the windows of Principal Dennis Crowley's office as 4 adults gathered around his polished wooden desk. The meeting had been arranged before dawn, before students arrived, before anyone could ask questions. Wade Harlan sat in the chair closest to Crowley's desk, his expensive suit perfectly pressed, his silver hair combed with corporate precision. At 52, he owned 3 car dealerships, funded half the football team's equipment, and had the principal's cell phone number programmed into his contacts. This Ellis girl threatened my son. Wade's voice was calm and controlled, the tone of a man used to getting his way. In front of the entire team, parents in the bleachers saw her take an aggressive stance. She made Brock fear for his safety. Brock slouched in the chair beside his father, still wearing his leather jacket like armor. His face showed none of the panic from yesterday's field. Today, he was the victim. "She got right up in my face," Brock added, his voice carrying just the right amount of wounded innocence. "I was just trying to be friendly, you know. Welcome the new girl. Then she goes psycho on me." Assistant Principal Marla Voss nodded from her spot by the window, her tablet ready to take notes. She was 43, had worked at Redwood Valley for 8 years, and knew which side of the bread had butter. "The optics are concerning," she said, using the careful language of school administration. "A new student displaying threatening behavior toward our star athlete, especially with homecoming next week." Principal Crowley shifted in his chair, sweat already forming on his forehead, despite the cool morning air. The booster fund Wade controlled paid for new uniforms, facility upgrades, and the salary increases that kept good teachers from leaving for better districts. "Of course we'll investigate," Crowley said quickly. "Zero tolerance for intimidation. Student safety is our top priority." Coach Calder sat in the corner, his weathered hands gripping his coffee cup like it was the only thing keeping him steady. He'd arrived hoping to tell the truth about what he'd witnessed, about Brock's provocation, about the football Brock had shoved into Naomi's chest. "The girl didn't start anything," Calder said, his voice quiet but firm. "Brock blocked her path. He was the aggressor." Wade Harlan's head turned slowly toward the coach, his eyes cold as winter stone. "Raymond?" Wade's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "We've known each other a long time. You remember the Marcus Ellis situation, don't you? How certain accusations can destroy a man's reputation, his career, his pension?" The threat hung in the air like smoke from a fire nobody wanted to acknowledge. Calder's face went pale. His hands trembled slightly as he set down his coffee cup. Crowley cleared his throat, eager to move past the tension. "I think we all agree this needs to be handled quickly, before rumors start spreading." 20 minutes later, Naomi Ellis was called out of her second-period English class. She walked the empty hallways with measured steps, her backpack slung over one shoulder, her face showing no emotion. The office secretary pointed toward the principal's conference room without making eye contact. Crowley sat behind his desk when she entered, with Marla Voss stationed by the door like a guard. "Miss Ellis," Crowley began, consulting a file that had appeared overnight, "we've received reports about an incident yesterday involving you and Brock Harlan." "What kind of reports?" Naomi's voice was steady, curious rather than defensive. "Multiple witnesses saw you take a threatening posture toward Brock," Marla said, her tone sharp with disapproval. "Intimidating behavior toward a student-athlete is a serious offense." Naomi tilted her head slightly. "Did anyone report what Brock did first? The football he shoved into my chest? The way he blocked my path?" Crowley's pen tapped against his desk. "Brock was attempting to welcome you to our school community. Your response was disproportionate. Disproportionate." Naomi repeated the word carefully, as if tasting something bitter. "Is that what we're calling self-defense now?" Marla stepped forward, her voice taking on the patronizing tone she reserved for difficult students. "Naomi, I'm going to give you some advice. Girls like you need to be very careful about how they appear in public. People are watching. They're making judgments. One wrong move, one moment that looks aggressive or confrontational, and suddenly you're labeled as a problem." The coded language hit Naomi like a slap. "Girls like you," She'd heard variations of this warning her whole life. Be twice as good. Don't give them a reason. Stay quiet. Stay small. Stay grateful. But Naomi Ellis had stopped being grateful the day her father died with lies attached to his name. She reached into her backpack and pulled out a small black notebook, the kind reporters used for interviews. Her pen moved across the page with careful precision as she wrote down the date, the time, and the exact words Marla Voss had just spoken. "What are you writing?" Marla demanded, stepping closer. "Names, times, and exact quotes," Naomi said without looking up. "My father taught me that truth only matters if you can prove it later." Crowley's face flushed red. "Miss Ellis, you're being placed under administrative review pending a full investigation. You're not to approach or speak to Brock Harlan. Any violation will result in immediate suspension." Naomi closed her notebook and stood up, slinging her backpack over her shoulder with the same calm control she'd shown on the football field. "Thank you for clarifying the school's position," she said, meeting Crowley's eyes directly. "I'll be sure to document that, too." She walked toward the door, her footsteps steady on the polished floor. As she reached for the handle, Brock Harlan appeared in the hallway, flanked by two of his teammates. His grin was wide and victorious, like a predator that had just cornered its prey. "Have a good meeting?" he asked loudly, making sure other students in the hallway could hear. "Hope you learned something about respect." Naomi paused for just a moment, her hand on the door handle. Then she continued walking, her notebook tucked safely in her backpack, her father's voice echoing in her memory. "Document everything. Truth is your weapon." The fix was in, but the game was far from over. The front door of the small rental house clicked shut behind Naomi and Valerie Ellis, sealing them into the quiet sanctuary of their kitchen. The afternoon light filtered through faded curtains, casting long shadows across the worn linoleum floor. Valerie set her purse on the counter with shaking hands, the stress of the day etched deep in the lines around her eyes. "Sit down, baby," Valerie said, pulling out one of the mismatched chairs around their small table. "Tell me what really happened in that office." Naomi dropped her backpack beside the chair and sat down heavily. The notebook remained tucked inside, but its weight felt like lead in her chest. She watched her aunt move around the familiar space, filling the kettle, reaching for tea bags, her movements sharp with nervous energy. "They blamed me," Naomi said simply, "for defending myself." Valerie's hand paused on the cabinet handle. "What exactly did you do?" "I stood my ground, the way Dad taught me." The kettle clattered as Valerie set it down too hard on the stove. She turned around, her face tight with fear and frustration. "Naomi, listen to me. You cannot fight these people. Wade Harlan owns half this town. He controls jobs at the dealership, the bank, the medical center where I work. His buddies sit on the school board, the city council, even the police department. So we just let them win?" Naomi's voice stayed calm, but her fingers drummed against the table. "We let them keep hurting people? We survive," Valerie said, her voice breaking slightly. "That's what Marcus would have wanted, for you to be safe." Naomi was quiet for a long moment, watching the steam begin to rise from the kettle. When she finally spoke, her words came out measured and deliberate. "Dad didn't just teach self-defense classes at the community center, did he?" Valerie's shoulders sagged. She turned off the burner before the kettle could whistle, her back still to Naomi. "What do you mean?" 3 years ago, before he died, he tried to expose something at Redwood Valley High, something about the football program. The silence stretched between them like a taut wire. Valerie's reflection in the dark window showed a woman carrying too many secrets for too many years. "How did you find out?" she whispered. "I found his files after the funeral. Police reports that were never filed, complaints that disappeared, names of students who tried to speak up about hazing, harassment, boosters paying for grades." Naomi's voice grew stronger with each word. "Dad documented everything. He had evidence of corruption going back years." Valerie turned around slowly, tears streaming down her face. "And look what happened to him. His reputation destroyed. Called a liar and a troublemaker. He died with people thinking he was crazy. But he wasn't crazy. He was right. Being right doesn't matter if you're dead." Valerie said, her voice harsh with grief and terror. "Promise me you'll let this go. Promise me you won't become another casualty of their machine." Naomi reached across the table and took her aunt's trembling hands. "I can't promise that. I transferred to Redwood Valley for a reason, to find out who buried Dad's complaint, who destroyed his name, who let Wade Harlan and his son think they're untouchable." Across town, in the dim light of his home office, Coach Raymond Calder sat surrounded by cardboard boxes he hadn't opened in years. His hands shook as he pulled out file after file, searching for something he'd tried to forget. Team rosters from 5 years ago, incident reports that were never submitted, complaint forms that somehow never made it to the principal's office. His fingers stopped on a manila envelope marked M. Ellis, personnel complaint. Inside, he found Marcus Ellis's signature on a formal document detailing systematic abuse within the football program. Calder's own signature was supposed to go on the forwarding line, confirming he'd passed the complaint up the chain of command. The line was blank. He remembered now. Wade Harlan's visit to his office, the quiet conversation about pension benefits and coaching contracts, the suggestion that some complaints were better handled internally to protect the program's reputation. Calder had buried the complaint in his files and told Marcus it had been processed. 6 months later, Marcus Ellis was dead, his name destroyed by whispers and rumors that painted him as an unstable troublemaker who made false accusations. Back in the rental house kitchen, Naomi walked to her bedroom and returned with a thick folder marked Dad's Work. She opened it on the table, revealing pages of handwritten notes, photocopied documents, and photographs. At the top of the first page, Wade Harlan's name was circled in red ink, with arrows connecting him to school board members, police officers, and local business owners. Naomi picked up a pen and carefully wrote beneath Wade's name, Brock Harlan. The legacy passed from father to son. The pattern continued, but this time, someone was watching. Someone was ready to fight back. The hallway buzzed with morning energy as students shuffled between lockers, backpacks slung over shoulders, voices mixing into a familiar hum of teenage chaos. Naomi walked toward her locker with the same calm stride she always carried, her notebook tucked under one arm, ready for another day of careful observation. She stopped short when she reached locker 247. Thick brown mud streaked across the metal door in deliberate swirls, dripping down toward the floor in ugly trails. A printed note was taped to the center, the words typed in bold black letters. Dangerous student, stay away. No slurs, no obvious threats. Just enough to make her look unstable without giving anyone grounds for punishment. "Oh, man, that's messed up," said Tyler Brennan, one of Brock's offensive linemen, his voice carrying just the right amount of fake sympathy. He held his phone at waist level, recording. Who would do something like that? Other students began to gather, drawn by the spectacle. Naomi could feel their eyes on her, waiting for a reaction, waiting for her to explode, to prove the note right, to give them the show they expected. "That's so wrong," whispered another teammate, Jake Morrison, shaking his head with practiced concern. "Poor girl. Must be really stressful being the new kid." Naomi pulled out her phone instead of touching the mess. She took photos from multiple angles, capturing the mud pattern, the note's placement, and the crowd of curious faces surrounding her. The camera clicked steadily as she documented everything with methodical precision. "Why aren't you cleaning it off?" asked Sarah Kellerman, a cheerleader whose voice dripped with false innocence. "I would be so upset if someone did that to my locker." "Evidence first," Naomi said quietly, still photographing. "Clean up after." Tyler's phone stayed trained on her. "Evidence? Evidence of what? It's just some jerk playing a prank." Naomi met his eyes through the phone screen. "Then you won't mind if I show these pictures to Principal Crowley?" The teammates exchanged quick glances. Jake shifted his weight nervously. "I mean, yeah, totally. You should definitely report it. We'll back you up, right, guys?" Nods and murmurs of agreement rippled through the group, but their phones never stopped recording. They wanted her reaction. They wanted her anger. They wanted her to look as dangerous as the note claimed. Naomi finished photographing and calmly walked away, leaving the mess untouched. Behind her, she heard Tyler's voice. "Did you see how cold she was? Like she didn't even care. That's not normal." First period English arrived with Mrs. Patterson shuffling papers at her desk, her gray hair pinned back in its usual tight bun. Naomi headed for her regular seat in the front row, but Mrs. Patterson's voice stopped her. "Naomi, dear, I'm going to need you to sit in the back today." The entire class turned to stare. Naomi stood frozen in the aisle, her backpack heavy on her shoulder. "Is there a problem with my seat?" Mrs. Patterson avoided eye contact, focusing intently on her lesson plan. "Some students have expressed concerns about feeling uncomfortable. It's nothing personal, just a precaution while the administration sorts things out." "Uncomfortable about what?" "Please take a seat in the back, dear. We need to start class." The walk to the back row felt endless. Every step echoed in the sudden silence. Naomi could feel 20 pairs of eyes tracking her movement, whispers starting as soon as she passed. She sat down heavily, her jaw tight with controlled anger. Brock wasn't even in this class, but his influence reached everywhere. After the bell rang and students filed out, a quiet voice spoke behind her. "That was complete garbage." Naomi turned to find Lila Torres gathering her notebook, dark eyes flashing with barely contained anger. She was small, maybe 5'3", with shoulder-length black hair and the kind of observant stillness that came from being invisible for too long. "Excuse me?" Naomi said carefully. "What Mrs. Patterson did, moving you for no reason. It's garbage." Lila slung her backpack over her shoulder. "I'm Lila, student newspaper." They walked into the hallway together, the crowd thinning as students headed to second period. Naomi studied Lila's face, looking for signs of another setup, another recording session. "Why do you care?" Naomi asked. "Because I've seen him do this before." "Brock." Lila's voice dropped lower as they moved toward the trophy hallway. "Different students. Same pattern. He provokes them, records their reactions, then plays victim when they fight back." The trophy hallway stretched before them, lined with decades of achievements. Football trophies dominated the display cases, Wade Harlan's name appearing on multiple plaques from his playing days. Championship banners hung from the ceiling like flags of conquest. "What happened to those other students?" Naomi asked. "Transferred out. Suspended. One kid got expelled for threatening behavior after Brock pushed him into a locker." Lila stopped in front of a massive trophy case dedicated to the current football team. Brock's photo smiled from the center, surrounded by newspaper clippings about his recruitment offers. The school always finds a way to make the victims look unstable, like they brought it on themselves. Naomi stared at Brock's photo, his confident grin mocking her through the glass. Around them, the hallway felt like a shrine to untouchable power, every trophy and banner a reminder of who really controlled Redwood Valley High. "So they protect him by making us look crazy," Naomi said, understanding flooding through her. Lila nodded grimly. "Exactly. They make you react, then edit the story to show only your response. By the time anyone sees what really happened, you look like the aggressor." The afternoon bell rang, signaling the end of classes. Students flooded the hallways, eager to escape into the parking lot or head to after-school activities. Naomi shouldered her backpack and walked beside Lila toward the main exit, carefully avoiding the path that led past the football field. "Smart move," Lila observed, noticing Naomi's route. "Practice starts in 20 minutes. Brock will be looking for round 2. They pushed through the heavy doors into the late afternoon sunlight. The parking lot stretched ahead, filled with cars and buses picking up students. Naomi spotted Valerie's old blue sedan near the back, her aunt visible through the windshield, probably grading papers from her clinic job. "There's my ride," Naomi said, pointing toward the car. They walked together across the asphalt, weaving between clusters of students heading to their own transportation. The equipment shed sat between them and Valerie's car, a squat concrete building where the groundskeeping staff stored lawn mowers and field maintenance gear. Naomi had almost reached the sedan when three figures stepped out from behind the equipment shed. Brock Harlan stood in the center, flanked by Tyler Mason and Jake Rodriguez. All three wore their red practice jerseys, numbers bold across their chests. Brock's quarterback, number 12, gleamed in the afternoon sun. "Well, well," Brock said, his voice carrying across the parking lot. "Look who's sneaking around like she owns the place." Naomi stopped walking. Lila moved closer, her phone already in her hand. Around them, other students slowed their pace, sensing drama about to unfold. "We're just leaving," Naomi said calmly, keeping her voice level. "Nah, I don't think so." Brock stepped forward, blocking their path to Valerie's car. "See, I've been thinking about yesterday, about how you acted all tough in that little blue hoodie." He gestured at her clothing with mock concern. "Same hoodie today, I see. Is that your costume or something?" Tyler and Jake laughed on cue, positioning themselves to Brock's left and right. Behind them, Naomi could see practice cameras mounted on tall poles near the field, probably recording everything for game film review. "You only got brave because Coach saved you," Brock continued, his voice getting louder. "Without him screaming like a little girl, you wouldn't have done nothing." Naomi kept her hands visible at her sides, palms open. "Lila, step back." "Smart girl," Brock said, grinning. "Tell your little friend to keep her distance. This is between me and Miss Tough Girl here." Lila took 2 steps backward but kept her phone ready, angling it to capture the confrontation. Her finger hovered over the record button. "I'm not looking for trouble," Naomi said to Brock, her voice steady despite the adrenaline building in her chest. "We're leaving. See, that's where you're wrong." Brock moved closer, close enough that Naomi could smell his cologne mixed with sweat from pre-practice warm-ups. "You came to my school. You walked on my field. You embarrassed me in front of my team." His voice dropped to barely above a whisper, meant only for her ears. "Nobody embarrasses Brock Harlan." The space between them shrank to less than 2 feet. Naomi could feel his breath on her face, see the calculated cruelty in his eyes. He wasn't angry. He was performing. Every movement was designed to provoke a reaction. Naomi's body responded automatically to the threat. Her left foot shifted back half a step. Her center of gravity lowered. Her right hand rose slightly, palm facing outward in a defensive position. She didn't touch him, didn't threaten him, but her stance changed from passive to ready. Brock's grin widened. "There it is! Did everyone see that? She's doing it again!" He turned toward the growing crowd of students, his voice carrying across the parking lot. "Look at her! Look how she's standing! She's threatening me!" Lila pressed record on her phone, capturing Brock's performance from her position several feet away. Tyler noticed the movement and immediately nudged Jake, pointing at her device. "Hey, she's recording!" Tyler shouted. Jake lunged forward and knocked Lila's phone from her hands. The device clattered across the asphalt, sliding under a parked car. Lila scrambled after it, but Jake blocked her path. "Oops," Jake said with mock innocence. "Butterfingers." From across the parking lot, Coach Calder's voice boomed like thunder. "Break it up! Everybody separate now!" The coach jogged toward them, whistle bouncing against his chest, his face red with exertion and anger. Students began scattering, not wanting to be caught in the aftermath. But Brock didn't move. He stayed close to Naomi, his voice dropping to a whisper only she could hear. "Next time you pose like that," he said, his eyes cold and calculating, "the whole town's gonna see exactly what I want them to see." The Redwood Valley Public Library closed at 8, but Eleanor Briggs still had her key. She unlocked the side door as Naomi, Valerie, and Lila approached through the evening shadows, their footsteps echoing off the empty sidewalk. "Thank you for meeting us," Valerie said quietly as they stepped inside. The smell of old books and cleaning supplies filled the air. Eleanor was smaller than Naomi had expected. A white woman in her late 60s with silver hair, pulled into a neat bun, and sharp eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. She wore a cardigan despite the warm evening, and carried herself with the careful dignity of someone who had spent decades watching powerful people lie. "I should have done this years ago," Eleanor said, leading them past dark shelves toward a small conference room. "But I was scared. We all were." She flipped on a single overhead light and gestured for them to sit around a scratched wooden table. In front of her chair sat a manila folder thick with documents, the edges worn from handling. "Your father was a good man," Eleanor said to Naomi without preamble. "He came to the school board because he cared about keeping students safe. That's what made him dangerous to them." Lila pulled out a notebook and pen, ready to take notes. Valerie reached over and squeezed Naomi's hand as Eleanor opened the folder. "Marcus didn't just report harassment," Eleanor began, her voice steady but heavy with old anger. "He was set up. Wade Harlan and his circle staged a confrontation to make your father look unstable." She pulled out a typed incident report, the paper yellowed with age. "This is the official version. Says Marcus attacked a football player named Danny Morrison during a parent meeting. Says Danny needed stitches and missed 2 games. Naomi stared at the report, her father's name printed in black ink under the words "assault perpetrator." The letters seemed to blur as she read. "But that's not what happened," Eleanor continued. "Danny Morrison was hurt during a hazing ritual the night before. The older players made him crawl through a drainage pipe filled with broken glass and rusty metal. Cut him up pretty bad." Valerie leaned forward. "They used an injured boy as bait?" "Wade Harlan's idea," Eleanor said bitterly. "Danny's family needed the scholarship money. Wade promised them the injury would be covered up if they blamed Marcus instead. Made it look like your father lost control and attacked a kid." She pulled out another document, this one handwritten meeting minutes. "I copied these before they disappeared from the official record. 3 separate families had complained about football players harassing their daughters. One girl said Brock's older brother cornered her in the parking lot. Another said players were following her home." Naomi's hands clenched into fists on the table. "They buried all of it. Every complaint," Eleanor confirmed. "Wade made them vanish. Said the girls were lying for attention or trying to hurt the team's reputation." Lila looked up from her notes. "What about Coach Calder? Did he know?" Eleanor's expression darkened. She pulled out a final sheet of paper, this one bearing an official school letterhead and a familiar signature at the bottom. "Raymond Calder signed a statement saying Marcus Ellis was mentally unstable and posed a danger to students," she said quietly. "I believe Wade pressured him into it, threatened his job, his pension, maybe worse." Naomi stared at Calder's signature, feeling like the ground was shifting beneath her feet. The coach who had protected her on the field had helped destroy her father years ago. "Marcus tried to fight it," Eleanor continued. "He hired a lawyer, gathered witnesses, demanded a real investigation. But Wade's influence ran too deep. The police refused to look at the evidence. The school board voted to ban Marcus from all school property. They destroyed his reputation so completely that nobody would listen to him anymore. And then he died," Valerie whispered. "Heart attack," Eleanor said. "But I always wondered if it was really the stress that killed him. The shame of being branded a child abuser when all he wanted was to keep kids safe." Naomi reached for the copied documents, her fingers trembling slightly. Page after page of evidence her father never got to use, proof that Wade Harlan had orchestrated everything. "Brock is using the same playbook," she said, her voice hollow with recognition. "Making me look aggressive, getting me on camera in defensive positions, building a case that I'm the problem." Eleanor nodded grimly. "Wade taught his son well. The same tactics, the same setup, probably even the same ending, if we don't stop it." Naomi took the copied records, feeling the weight of her father's stolen justice in her hands. The truth Marcus Ellis had died trying to expose was finally hers to carry forward. The trophy hallway gleamed under fluorescent lights, golden plaques, and silver cups reflecting Naomi's blue hoodie as she walked toward her last class. Her backpack felt heavier with Eleanor's documents inside, but her steps were steady. The complaint was filed. The evidence was documented. For the first time since arriving at Redwood Valley, she felt like she might actually win. Brock Harlan stepped out from behind the largest trophy case. "Well, well, look who's been following me around all day." Naomi stopped walking. 3 teammates emerged from the alcoves between display cases, blocking her path forward and backward. The hallway suddenly felt narrow, cramped. She could smell their body spray and sweat from afternoon practice. "I'm going to class," Naomi said quietly. Her voice stayed level, controlled. "See? She admits it." Brock grinned at his friends. "Been stalking me since yesterday. Can't get enough, I guess." Jake Morrison held his phone openly, recording. The red light blinked steadily. Naomi noticed the angle. He was filming her, not Brock. "Move aside, please," she said. Brock took a step closer. "You think you're smart with those little papers? Think you can mess with my family?" He knocked her books from her arms. The binder hit the floor hard, pages scattering. Eleanor's copies slid across the polished tiles. "Oops," Brock laughed. "Clumsy me." Naomi breathed slowly. She did not bend down. She did not reach for the papers. She took one step backward, hands open at her sides, palms facing forward. "Back off," she said clearly. "Or what?" Brock moved closer, his chest inches from her face. "You gonna hit me again? Show everyone how dangerous you really are?" The teammates pressed in from both sides. Naomi could not move left or right without touching them. She took another step back, her shoulder blades almost touching the trophy case. Her feet shifted slightly, weight balanced, knees bent just enough. She raised her hands to chest level, palms still open. Not fists, not weapons, just space. "Look at that stance," Brock shouted, performing for the camera. "She's threatening us, just like her crazy father." Naomi did not swing, did not push, did not touch anyone. Brock suddenly stumbled backward, arms flailing, crashing into Jake Morrison. He hit the floor hard, his Letterman jacket sliding across the tiles. "She attacked me!" Brock yelled from the ground. "Did you get that? Tell me you got that." Jake's phone was still recording. The red light never stopped blinking. Assistant Principal Marla Voss appeared at the end of the hallway, moving fast like she had been waiting nearby. Her heels clicked sharply against the floor. "What is going on here?" she demanded, but her eyes were already on Naomi. "She pushed me." Brock scrambled to his feet, pointing. "I was just walking, and she attacked me. Jake got it all on video." "That's not what happened," Naomi said. Her hands were still open, still visible. "I never touched him." "The video doesn't lie." Marla Voss's voice was cold, final. "Let me see that phone." Jake handed it over immediately. Voss watched the screen, nodding. Her face showed no surprise, like she already knew what she would find. "Office, now." She pointed at Naomi. "You're done for the day." By the time Naomi reached Principal Crowley's office, the video was already online. Students gathered around phones in clusters, sharing and commenting. The clip was short, edited. It showed Naomi in her defensive stance, hands raised, and then Brock falling backward. Everything before was cut out. Everything after was missing. The suspension letter was printed and ready before Naomi sat down. "Pending disciplinary hearing," Crowley said, not meeting her eyes. "Effective immediately." Valerie arrived 20 minutes later, her face pale. "They called the clinic. Said there might be concerns about my judgment if I can't control my niece." Lila appeared in the doorway, shaking her head. "They killed the article. Won't let the student paper run anything about football or bullying until after homecoming." Naomi sat on the bench outside Crowley's office, staring at her phone screen. The video had been viewed 300 times already. Comments poured in, calling her violent, dangerous, unstable, just like they did to her father. She watched the clip again, and again. In the trophy case reflection behind Brock, she caught something. A quick movement before he fell, his own elbow jerking backward into Jake's chest. And there, in the corner of the glass, a tiny red light blinked from the ceiling. The security camera had been recording everything. Valerie's hands gripped the steering wheel tight as she drove away from Redwood Valley High. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the dashboard, but the light felt cold. Naomi sat in the passenger seat, Lila's borrowed tablet balanced on her knees, replaying the viral video for the 7th time. "Stop watching that," Valerie said. "It's just making you angry." "I'm not angry." Naomi's voice was steady, calm. She touched the screen to replay the clip again. "I'm looking." The edited footage showed her in the defensive stance, hands raised. then Brock falling backward, arms flailing. 23 seconds total, 347 views now. Naomi paused the video at the exact moment before Brock fell. Behind him, the trophy case glass reflected the hallway like a mirror. She could see herself, small and clear in the reflection. She could see Jake holding the phone. And there, barely visible in the corner of the glass, was something else. "There's a security camera," she said. Valerie glanced over. "What?" "In the trophy hallway. Look." Naomi turned the tablet toward her aunt. "See that red light in the reflection? Top corner of the case?" Valerie pulled into their driveway and put the car in park. She took the tablet, squinting at the screen. "I can't really see. It's there. And it was recording everything." Naomi's voice got stronger. "The real footage shows what happened before they started filming. It shows Brock knocking my books down. It shows him crowding me against the wall. Even if there's a camera, you think they'll let us see it?" Naomi met her aunt's eyes. "They'll erase it. Tonight, probably." Valerie was quiet for a long moment. Then she pulled out her phone. "We need a lawyer. We can't afford. I don't care what it costs." Valerie's voice was fierce. "They did this to Marcus. They're not doing it to you." 20 minutes later, they sat at Eleanor Briggs's kitchen table while the retired secretary made phone calls. Eleanor's living room was small but organized, with neat stacks of papers and a rotary phone that looked older than Naomi. "Amelia Grant," Eleanor said, hanging up. "She's the one you need. Used to be a prosecutor before she went into civil rights. She always suspected Marcus got railroaded, but she couldn't prove it back then." Eleanor dialed the number from memory. "Amelia, it's Eleanor Briggs. I need you to listen carefully. They just did it again." The conversation was brief, but intense. Eleanor explained about Naomi, the video, and the security camera. When she hung up, her face looked grim but determined. "She's sending a preservation order to the school district tonight. Emergency filing. They won't be able to destroy or alter any security footage without facing criminal charges." "Will that work?" Valerie asked. "It better, because if they erase that footage now, it's obstruction of justice." Across town, Principal Crowley's office phone rang at 11:47 p.m. He answered it in his pajamas, standing in his home kitchen. "This is Attorney Amelia Grant, representing Naomi Ellis," the voice said. "I'm calling to inform you that a preservation order has been filed with the district court. All security footage from October 15th must be preserved immediately." Crowley felt his stomach drop. We'll need to review our policies." "Principal Crowley, this is not a request. Tampering with evidence after receiving this notice is a felony. The order will be served officially tomorrow morning." The line went dead. Crowley stared at his phone, then immediately dialed Wade Harlan's number. "We have a problem," he said when Wade answered. "Big problem. Coach Raymond Calder received a copy of the preservation order at 6 a.m. He read it twice, standing in his empty kitchen with coffee growing cold in his hand. The paper was official, stamped, impossible to ignore. He knew exactly which camera the lawyer meant. The old security system in the trophy hallway had been installed 5 years ago after some equipment went missing. Most people forgot it was there, tucked behind the trophy case lighting. But Calder remembered. He remembered because he had checked the blind spots when they installed it. His phone buzzed. A text from Wade Harlan. "Meeting. My office. 1 hour." Calder crushed the preservation order in his fist, then smoothed it out again. There was no running from this anymore. The choice was simple. Lie and go down with Wade's ship, or tell the truth and face what he should have faced years ago. At 8 a.m. sharp, Amelia Grant called Naomi directly. "The preservation order is in place," she said, "but we need to move fast. The camera footage may clear you completely, but only if someone inside that school stops lying long enough for us to get to the truth." Naomi held the phone steady. For the first time since Brock knocked her books down, she felt like she might actually win. "What do we do next?" "We make them choose," Amelia said, "between protecting you or protecting themselves." The morning air was crisp, carrying the smell of autumn leaves and fresh paint from the homecoming banners hanging outside Coach Calder's office window. Red and gold streamers fluttered in the breeze, announcing Friday night's big game in bold letters. The decorations looked cheerful and innocent, but inside the small office, the atmosphere was heavy with years of buried secrets. Coach Raymond Calder sat behind his metal desk, his weathered hands folded tightly. Across from him, Naomi Ellis sat straight in a plastic chair, flanked by her Aunt Valerie and attorney Amelia Grant. The office smelled like old leather and disinfectant, with championship photos covering every wall. Trophies gleamed from shelves, but they felt like evidence now instead of achievements. "I've been carrying this for 6 years," Calder began, his voice rougher than usual. "Every day, watching Wade Harlan's boy do exactly what his daddy taught him. Same playbook, same lies." Amelia placed a small digital recorder on the desk between them. "Tell us what really happened to Marcus Ellis." Calder stared at the homecoming banners outside, as if they reminded him of everything wrong with the school's priorities. "Marcus came to me first, before he went to the administration. Said some of the football players were hazing younger kids, not just team initiation stuff. Real violence, forcing freshmen to fight each other for the boosters' entertainment, making them drink until they passed out. Sexual humiliation." Valerie's face tightened. "Marcus tried to stop it? He documented everything. Photos, names, dates. He had proof that Wade Harlan and 2 other boosters were organizing these bonding sessions at the lake house. When Marcus threatened to go to the police, Wade got desperate." Naomi leaned forward, her voice controlled but sharp. "So, they set him up. Wade had his boy Tommy stage a fight with Marcus in the parking lot. Kid was already injured from a hazing ritual gone wrong, but they made it look like Marcus attacked him. Tommy even agreed to lie about it because his family needed Wade's dealership job." Amelia's pen moved quickly across her notepad. "And you signed a statement against Marcus?" Calder's hands shook slightly. "Wade cornered me the next morning. Said if I didn't call Marcus unstable and dangerous, he'd make sure the school board knew I was drinking again. I'd been sober for 2 years, but I had a relapse during my divorce. Wade knew about it. He knew my pension, my reputation. Everything depended on keeping quiet." The office fell silent except for the sound of Amelia's pen and the distant laughter of students in the hallway. Homecoming week always brought excitement, but it felt obscene knowing what celebrations had covered up. Marcus lost his job, his reputation, and his will to fight, Calder continued. He moved away with his daughter and died thinking this whole town believed he was a violent man who attacked kids. The truth is, he was the only one brave enough to protect them. Naomi's jaw was set hard, but her eyes showed the pain of hearing her father's story confirmed. And now Brock is doing the same thing. Same exact method. Provoke you, edit the story, make you look dangerous, then bury you before anyone asks questions. Wade taught his son well. Amelia stopped writing and looked directly at Calder. "Are you willing to sign a statement admitting all of this? Under oath? Yes. Are you willing to testify in public? At a school board meeting? In court, if necessary?" Calder was quiet for a long moment, staring at the championship photos on his wall. Pictures of him with Wade Harlan, pictures of teams he'd coached, pictures of a career built on compromises and silence. "Coach Calder," Valerie said softly, "my brother died, thinking he was alone, that nobody believed him." "I know." Calder's voice cracked slightly. "I've known every day for 6 years." Naomi spoke for the first time since the confession began. Her voice was steady but cold. "I'm not asking you to do this for me. I'm not asking you to do it because you feel guilty. I'm asking you to do it because it's right. Because those kids you let get hurt deserved better. Because my father deserved better." Calder looked at her, seeing Marcus in the set of her shoulders and the directness of her gaze. "You're not going to forgive me easily, are you?" "No, but I'll use your testimony to burn down everything Wade Harlan built." Amelia finished writing and slid the statement across the desk. "Sign this, and there's no going back. Wade will come after you with everything he has." Calder picked up his pen, then hesitated. Through the window he could see students hanging more decorations, preparing for the pep rally. Brock Harlan would be there, soaking up applause, believing he'd already won. "I should have done this 6 years ago," Calder said. He signed his name with firm, clear strokes. Then he reached across the desk, unpinned his coach's whistle from the lanyard around his neck, and placed it carefully on the metal surface. "I'll testify at the board meeting next week," he said. "I'll testify in court. I'll testify anywhere you need me to testify, no matter what it costs me." The afternoon sun blazed down on the football field as the entire school gathered for the homecoming pep rally. Red and gold banners snapped in the wind, and the cheerleaders' voices echoed across the stadium as they led the crowd through fight songs. Students packed the bleachers, teachers stood along the sidelines, and parents filled the visitor section with cameras ready. Wade Harlan stood near the podium, his expensive suit crisp despite the heat. In his hands, he held a golden trophy shaped like a football with Leadership Award engraved on the base. He smiled and waved at the boosters who had paid for his influence over the years. This was his moment, his son's moment, the culmination of everything he had built in Redwood Valley. Principal Crowley gripped the microphone with sweaty hands, trying to keep the energy high despite the tension that had been building all week. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are here to celebrate our Redwood Valley Eagles as they prepare for the biggest game of the season." The crowd roared, but Crowley's voice wavered slightly. He knew about the preservation order that had arrived the night before. He knew Amelia Grant was asking uncomfortable questions about security footage. He knew this rally might be the last normal moment before everything exploded. The cheerleaders finished their routine, and the football team jogged onto the field in their practice jerseys. Brock Harlan led them, his helmet tucked under his arm, soaking up the applause like he always did. He raised his free hand to acknowledge the crowd, every inch the golden boy who owned this town. That's when the quiet began. It started near the main entrance and spread like a wave across the stadium. Students stopped cheering, parents turned their heads, teachers craned their necks to see what had captured everyone's attention. Naomi Ellis walked onto the field. She wore her blue hoodie, the same one Brock had mocked, and her jeans were clean but simple. Behind her walked Valerie, her face determined despite the worry in her eyes. Next came Amelia Grant in a sharp business suit, carrying a thick legal folder. Eleanor Briggs followed, her gray hair neat and her expression fierce. Lila Torres stayed close to the group, her phone ready to document everything. And behind them all, walking slowly but steadily, came Coach Raymond Calder. The silence was complete now. Even the cheerleaders stopped moving. Wade Harlan's smile disappeared as he watched the group approach the field. Principal Crowley gripped the microphone tighter, his knuckles white. "What is she doing here?" Wade barked into his phone, speaking to someone in the administrative booth. "She's suspended. Get security." But before anyone could move, Amelia Grant's voice cut through the stadium with the authority of someone who had spent years in courtrooms. "Naomi Ellis is present under legal protection," she announced, her words carrying clearly across the field. "Redwood Valley High School has been served with an emergency preservation order. All evidence related to recent incidents must be protected, and this student has the right to be present during official school functions." The crowd stirred uneasily. Parents whispered to each other. Students pulled out their phones. The cheerleaders looked confused, still frozen in their formation. Wade Harlan's face turned red. "This is a violation of school discipline. She threatened my son." "No," Amelia replied calmly. "Your son threatened her, and we have proof." That's when Brock lost control. All week, he had been the star, the victim, the golden boy, everyone protected. He had played his role perfectly, making Naomi look dangerous while he stayed clean. But now she stood on his field, in front of his crowd, with lawyers and witnesses and people who weren't afraid of his father. "You ruined everything!" Brock screamed, his voice cracking with rage. "This was supposed to be my day, my rally, my award." He dropped his helmet, and it rolled across the turf. Students in the bleachers leaned forward. Parents raised their cameras. Teachers stepped closer to the action. "Brock, calm down," Coach Calder said firmly, but his former player was beyond hearing. Naomi stood perfectly still, her hands at her sides, watching Brock's face contort with fury. She had seen this rage before in the hallway, by the equipment shed, in the trophy case. But now it was happening in front of everyone, with no edited video to hide the truth. "You think you're so tough?" Brock yelled, advancing across the field. "You think you can come to my school and embarrass me?" "I think," Naomi said quietly, her voice somehow carrying across the silent stadium, "that everyone should see who you really are." Brock charged. He ran straight at her, his face twisted with anger, his fists clenched, his intention clear to every person in the stadium. This wasn't self-defense or school spirit or teenage roughhousing. This was an 18-year-old boy attacking a girl who had never touched him. Naomi watched him come, her body completely relaxed, until the moment he was 3 steps away. Then she shifted her weight, lowered her center of gravity, and settled into the same defensive stance she had used on the practice field. Her left foot slid back, her right palm rose, and her body angled to deflect rather than strike. But this time, the whole stadium saw Brock coming at her first. Brock's momentum carried him forward like a freight train, but Naomi was no longer in his path. She stepped to the left, smooth and controlled, letting his charge carry him past her. As he stumbled forward, reaching to grab her, she caught his extended wrist with both hands. Her body pivoted, using his own speed against him, redirecting his force downward and away. Brock hit the turf hard but safely, landing on his shoulder and rolling onto his back. He wasn't hurt, but he was completely exposed, sprawled on the field in front of everyone who had come to watch him receive his leadership award. The stadium erupted. Students shouted. Parents gasped. Cameras flashed from every direction. "Nobody move!" Coach Calder's voice boomed across the field, as Derek Martinez, Brock's teammate, started forward to help. "Stand down, all of you!" Derek stopped mid-step, confused by the authority in his former coach's voice. The other players held their positions, unsure what to do without their leader barking orders. Brock rolled over, grass stains streaking his white jersey, his face red with humiliation and rage. "She attacked me. You all saw it. They saw you charge her," Amelia Grant interrupted, her voice carrying across the field. "And now they're going to see the truth." She raised her hand, signaling to Lila Torres, who had positioned herself near the stadium's technical booth. Lila nodded and connected her laptop to the main display system. The homecoming banners disappeared from the massive screen above the scoreboard. In their place appeared security footage from the trophy hallway. The crowd fell silent as the preserved video began to play. Crystal clear and unedited, it showed Naomi walking toward her locker. It showed Brock and his teammates positioning themselves in her path. It showed Brock knocking her books to the floor, crowding her with his friends, backing her against the trophy cases. Then came the moment everyone had seen in the viral clip. But this version showed everything. Brock's deliberate shove, Naomi's defensive stance, Brock throwing himself backward while his friend recorded only her movement, the trophy glass reflection that had caught Brock's real action. And finally, Assistant Principal Marla Voss appearing within seconds, as if she had been waiting nearby. Gasps rippled through the bleachers. Students who had shared the edited video stared at their phones, realizing they had been tricked. Parents who had called Naomi dangerous watched her careful, controlled movements, seeing no aggression at all. "This is the footage the school tried to hide," Amelia announced, "but there's more you need to hear." She pulled out a document and began reading in her clear courtroom voice. "Statement of Raymond Calder, head football coach, Redwood Valley High School. I hereby confess that in 1998, I was pressured by Wade Harlan and school board members to sign a false statement against Marcus Ellis. Mr. Ellis was attempting to report violent hazing and harassment connected to the football program when he was framed for injuring a student. The injury actually occurred during a hazing ritual, but Mr. Ellis became the scapegoat because he was an outsider who knew how to defend himself. The stadium buzzed with shocked murmurs. Older residents recognized the name Marcus Ellis. Some of the mothers in the bleachers stood up, their faces showing recognition and dawning anger. "I remember him," one woman called out. "Marcus Ellis taught my daughter self-defense, after those football players cornered her in the parking lot. "Mine too," another mother shouted. "He helped girls stay safe, and they destroyed him for it." More voices joined in, a growing chorus of parents who remembered the man Wade Harlan and the school had painted as dangerous. They remembered him as someone who protected their children when the school wouldn't. Wade Harlan's face had gone from red to purple. He pushed past Principal Crowley, advancing on Amelia with his finger pointed like a weapon. "You have no right," he screamed. "I'll bury you. I'll destroy your practice. I'll make sure you never work in this county again." Two uniformed officers appeared at Wade's shoulders. They had been present for security during the rally, but now they were there for a different reason. "Mr. Harlan," one of them said firmly, "you need to come with us." Wade spun around, his face twisted with disbelief. "You can't arrest me. I own this town. I pay your salaries." "Not anymore, you don't," the officer replied, taking Wade's arm as he continued screaming threats at Amelia, at Naomi, at everyone who had dared to expose his son. The crowd watched in stunned silence as Wade Harlan was escorted away, his voice echoing across the stadium even as the officers led him toward the parking lot. Brock remained on the turf where Naomi had dropped him, staring up at the darkening sky while his entire world collapsed around him. The next morning, the Redwood Valley High School Board auditorium buzzed with an energy no one had seen in decades. Every seat was filled. Parents who had stayed silent for years sat shoulder to shoulder with reporters from 3 counties. Students lined the walls, many holding phones to live stream the proceedings. Local television crews positioned cameras near the front, their lights creating a harsh glare across the wooden podium. Naomi sat in the 3rd row between Valerie and Amelia Grant. Behind them, Eleanor Briggs clutched a thick manila folder against her chest. Coach Calder sat alone near the back, his resignation letter already submitted, but his testimony still needed. Board President Janet Morrison called the emergency session to order. Her voice carried none of its usual authority. The events of homecoming had shaken everyone who thought they understood how Redwood Valley worked. "We are here," Morrison began, "to address serious allegations of misconduct, cover-up, and institutional failure at Redwood Valley High School." She cleared her throat, reading from prepared notes. "Effective immediately, Brock Harlan is removed from the football team and suspended pending a full disciplinary review. All booster contracts associated with Wade Harlan's dealership are frozen until the district attorney's investigation concludes." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Wade's arrest had made the morning news, but hearing his financial grip on the school officially severed felt like watching a dam break. "Principal Dennis Crowley and Assistant Principal Marla Voss are placed on administrative leave," Morrison continued. "The district will conduct a comprehensive review of their handling of student complaints, disciplinary procedures, and evidence preservation." More whispers filled the auditorium. Several parents nodded approvingly, remembering their own children's complaints that had been dismissed or buried. Morrison's voice grew stronger. "We are also announcing the reopening of a 1998 case involving Marcus Ellis. New evidence has demonstrated that Mr. Ellis's complaint was improperly handled and that he was wrongfully accused in retaliation for attempting to protect students." Naomi felt Valerie's hand squeeze hers. Around them, older parents who remembered Marcus began to sit straighter, their faces showing recognition and growing anger at how completely they had been lied to. "Naomi Ellis's suspension is hereby erased from all records," Morrison announced, looking directly at Naomi. "The district formally acknowledges that she was subjected to targeted harassment and that disciplinary action against her was inappropriate." The board secretary stood and handed Morrison another document. Morrison's hands trembled slightly as she read it. "The Redwood Valley School District publicly restores Marcus Ellis's original complaint and acknowledges that his concerns about student safety were valid and courageous. We announce the creation of the Marcus Ellis Student Safety Program, which will provide self-defense instruction, harassment reporting procedures, and independent oversight of athletic programs." She paused, meeting several parents' eyes. "This program will be funded by settlement money from this case and supervised by outside organizations to ensure transparency. Eleanor Briggs rose from her seat, walked to the front, and handed Morrison the manila folder she had been protecting. "These are Marcus Ellis's original files," she said clearly. "The ones the board claimed were lost." Morrison accepted the folder with visible shame. "These documents will be entered into the public record immediately." Coach Calder stood near the back of the room. His voice carried clearly despite his position. "I resign as head football coach, effective today. But I will testify fully about my role in covering up the truth about Marcus Ellis. I owe that much to his memory and to his daughter." Several board members shifted uncomfortably. They had all known pieces of the truth. They had all chosen silence over justice. Lila Torres sat with her laptop open in the press section, typing rapidly. Her article would publish within the hour, complete with quotes, timeline, and the full security footage. The story would reach far beyond Redwood Valley. Morrison looked exhausted as she reached the end of her prepared statement. "The board acknowledges that systemic failures allowed harassment, cover-ups, and retaliation to continue for years. We commit to transparency, accountability, and ensuring no student faces what Naomi Ellis endured." The session ended with scattered applause, but most people sat quietly, processing the magnitude of what had been revealed. Change felt possible for the first time in years. 3 weeks later, Naomi walked across the same football field where everything had started. She wore her blue hoodie, the same one Brock had mocked, but now it felt different. The field felt different too. 15 younger students waited for her near the sideline. They ranged from middle school age to sophomores, boys and girls who had signed up for the first Marcus Ellis student safety class. "Strength," Naomi told them as they formed a loose circle, "is not about hurting people. It's about making sure nobody gets to decide you are helpless. If you enjoyed the story, leave a like to support my channel and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one." On the screen, I have picked 2 special stories just for you. Have a wonderful day.